Welcome back, Lorcana players. It's Poisonous. Today's video is talking about the set champs that I played in over the weekend. First set champs in my local area, so I got to try out one of the decks that I've been practicing with and wanted to let you know how it went. I did get second place, so I made it all the way to the finals, but unfortunately I lost. However, I think the deck is still a serious contender, and I want to break down the matchups that I had and give you some idea how to play this deck. As always, thanks for checking out my video. I really appreciate all your support. Got some really exciting news coming up. There's going to be some brand new content on my channel in the next couple of weeks. I'm really excited to share it with you and for everybody. Make sure you stay tuned. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and tap that subscribe button. Follow my Twitch channel if you haven't already followed it. And leave a comment. Let me know how your set champs are going. So we'll take a look at the deck list. I won't dwell on the deck list too long because I've already made a couple of videos about this deck, and it was in my last kind of set champs preview. However, I made some changes because I knew that the meta that I was going into was going to have an increased amount of aggro and wasn't going to have some of the other matchups that this deck sometimes struggles with, like green steel discard. So I made some changes to make it a little stronger into aggro. And to do that, I took out the cloud kickers from my other list, and I put in some foxes. I increased the number of crabs. I went down, and we don't talk about went up in Elsa. That way, if they play Pete, you still have options to deal with their characters. I think that this deck is good into aggro because of the purple package with the crab fox bounce. The 2-cost Diablo is also a really good anti-aggro card, but the crabs, I would say, are probably the most important thing. Especially in a meta where you have to deal with the Rhino Power Hamster. You need effective ways to remove it, and this deck has a lot of characters with strength. You need ways to buff them up in order to... This deck did fare pretty well into those aggro matchups. I did win all of them. They often went to 3 games, but it was still winnable. I think that the Fox is really good over the Cloud Kicker. It buys you a turn by bouncing a character. However, the downside to that is that if all their characters are really cheap and they're aggro-y, then they can just play them again the next turn, and if you don't have a wait, then you end up just losing anyway. So I took the kits out for the foxes because the fox can rush in and take out a daisy, and the daisies can be pretty tough to deal with. And then we have Elsa to deal with the exotic characters once we get up to 5 ink. I think that if you're expecting a more mid-range field, then the kits often provide better tempo. This deck doesn't win quickly. It's got, low questing power, relies on getting hand control and board control to win the game. So I think that you should anticipate needing to fight for the board as much as possible against aggro decks that are trying to go under us. And the Fox and the extra crab, do that pretty well. So that's why I made those changes to the deck list. But overall, it's still basically the same deck from my last video, and you could play it either way, and I think that it would be pretty effective. But I made a couple calls for my local meta. I think that you should always try and tailor your decks to matchups you know you're going to have. Let's take a look at the matchups that I had. I played on July 20th at EM Cards and Collectibles. It was a 12-player tournament. We had 4 rounds, best of 3, with a cut to top 4. In the first round, I played against the Amber Steel aggro list. It did go 2-1 for me. They were on the play, so it was very hard. I had to deal with their aggressive board right off the bat. I did steal game 1 on the draw, which was nice, and then I play. But very hard to stop that deck sometimes if they just get all the right draws. They hit the docks, they refuel, they use Rapunzel. It can be very hard to slow them down, but we did get there. In the second round, I played against an Amethyst Steel mid-range deck. I did win 2-0 here. In both games, I was able to get hand control with a discard, and then once I had that, I was able to board and kind of take over and get to victory. They would get to, 10 or 11 or, and then I could get control and win. In round 3, I went up against Blue Steel aggro, the Kiwi Birds deck list. Again, tough matchup. The ward with the Alice and the bodyguards and everything can make it kind of challenging for a deck that's relying on challenging in order to get board control. So we did get there, but it was really hard fought matchup. In round 4, I was 3-0, and so was one other person. So we agreed to do an intentional draw, so I didn't play, but they were playing the green Steel Bogo list, and I ended up playing against them in the finals. So it was a top cut. At the top cut, I was 2nd seed, and the person that I drew with was 1st seed. So at top 4, I played against the Ruby Amethyst Evasive deck. I was on the play because of my seed, which was nice, but it still was a hard-fought matchup. It was 2-1. That deck is probably one of the harder decks for this matchup because of the amount of evasive characters they have, all the big stuff. They do have access to a lot of card draw, so it can be very hard to stop them and actually win out that match. I did get there though, very well played by my opponent, and then in the finals, I played against the Green Steel Bogo deck. You may have seen it on stream at the Pro Play tournament. It did make top 8 there. But it's a deck that has a lot of reach. It has a lot of characters that are very difficult for our characters to do. And I wasn't able to win on the play or on the draw. So not a great matchup. And it was really well played by my opponent. They knew the lines that they needed to play and made it very difficult for me. But it was, a lot of fun. Can't always win. Sometimes you get a matchup that is just not a good matchup for you. But this is a deck that probably isn't seeing a lot of play, although if you're looking for a sleeper pick for your set champs, the Green Steel Bogo list, I'll put the deck list up at the end of the video. Let's break down the matchups. So in the Amber Steel aggro matchup, the important cards that you want to look for, especially in your opening, are Ursula. They oftentimes keep a Storm or Strength, or they might draw into a Storm or Strength, and even some lists are running Long Came Zeus in a more rangy aggro deck, so if you know you're going up against Steel, Ursula is really good at defending your board characters. The other cards that you really need to prioritize are Crab. Need a way to deal with their characters if they play a Daisy or if they play Rhino. Need ways to buff up our characters and actually deal with them before they are out of control for us to claw our way back. Fox also very helpful. It can rush in and take out a Daisy, but also, pick up Ursula so you can get her and long after. And Elsa is also really important. She's not great right away in your opening hand, but there will become a point in the game where you need to deal with some of the characters before they get to quest. But they have a Piglet that's not exerted. Elsa comes in, exerts it, rushes, and takes it out. You also can sing songs like We Don't Talk About Bruno. Once you establish that 5-cost singer, you can get a lot better tempo out of your Bruno and bounce one of the characters off the board and preferably discard if they don't have cards in hand. So those are the cards that are really strong here. They're trying to go as fast as they can, and the only choice that we have is to try and slow them down as much as possible until our board is wide enough that we can quest and win. There's no way for us to race a deck that goes this fast. Your priority should always be stopping them if possible. Our opponent, on the other hand, the cards that really help them in this matchup are like a turn 1 Daisy, because our characters on turn 1 are either a Diablo with 0 attack or a Diablo with 1 attack and no way to buff it up on 2, so it's able to quest. And our deck has a lot of actions and songs, so there's a good chance that the Daisy is going to not draw us any cards. It's going to bottom, and that means that it's essentially a 2-quester for free. It's not getting any extra cards to ink. Or Shift Rhino, really good. In a challenged-based deck like what we're using, having resist 2 and 4 attack means that we often have to trade one or more characters into the Rhino, and it's able to quest and do favorable trades on their side of the board. So we got to watch out for that. Pete can also be useful. It's really useful at the end when they're trying to get to 20 and they're at like 15 or 16 and they have characters down and they don't want us to play any actions like Bruno. They can use the Pete to try and lock off our actions. We also try and use the wrong lever to put their characters in their hand or on the bottom of the deck, and the Pete prevents it as well. And the last card that really helps them win this matchup is Rapunzel. If they can get a good Rapunzel draw for 2 or 3 cards and hand once, that's often enough to get them to the end of the game. Very tough because we usually can't go slow enough to set up a Prince John and start discarding them. So if they get extra card draw, they're just going to end up in the game. The game plan here is to slow them down as much as possible and avoid giving them good Rapunzel value when possible, and build a wide board while dealing with their threats so we can eventually win the game. Very tough matchup. I feel like you gotta go fast. Peter Pan also is an honorable mention here because he gives all of our other evasives rush. But the Yago, which is really good at taking out something like a Daisy, also dies instantly with the Storm Rage on and Strength for Fire. So a bit of a weakness there in this particular matchup, but overall, very good. This matchup is tough, but definitely winnable, especially if you have the Fox Crabs and you prioritize that in your own. Second matchup that I had was against Purple Steel. It was kind of like a mid-rangey deck, and in this list, I think that you want to prioritize our good value cards. Diablo, getting a Shift Diablo down, really big here. They have a lot of cards that draw cards. All of their 1-drops usually draw them cards. They're probably playing Rabbit. It also draws them cards. So getting a Diablo down is really powerful in this matchup. Prince John, also really good here. You start discarding their cards, then the Prince John becomes super effective at giving us lots of resources. That way we can take out their characters effectively, not run out of gas, because they oftentimes will keep drawing cards. That means that unless we can cut their cards off and then discard them, that we need to also be drawing lots of cards, so prioritizing that Prince John. Also, Genie is another strong card. Genie quests for 2, he's evasive. He gives you a body that can challenge into their evasives. They're running Genie or any other evasive, the Genie can clean them up, and if not, then he's a threat that they have to deal with. Oftentimes if they're running Zeus, then he's a Zeus target, and that prevents your other characters from being Zeus or Diablo. Wrong Lever, also really useful here. When they play some of their stickier characters, you can put them on the bottom of their deck and kind of win out there. But I think that this matchup is pretty favored as long as you can keep up on card draw and don't let them get too far ahead. But they don't have a great way to deal with a wide board. They do have good tempo with their song removal, but if you can build a wide board and limit resources, then they'll run out of gas before we do, as long as you set up your cards that they want to prioritize in this matchup are things like Strength. Want to be able to sing and remove our characters, especially the early Diablo. They do a 1-drop on 1, a 2-drop on 2, and then can't play any actions, and then start singing Strength, and then they play a 4-drop, and then the 4-drop plays the next turn. They can win games like that against a lot of decks, but our Prince John has Ward. We can draw lots of cards. Fox is also good for them because it gives them Rush. But we do have a lot of evasive characters, and the evasives mean that unless they're also playing a lot of evasives, they're relying strictly on their songs, and we can deal with their songs with cards like Ursula. This is a pretty good matchup for us. I feel like I'd be happy to play into this matchup. In round 3, we played against the Kiwi Birds list. This is very similar to round 1 in that it's an aggro list. They have a game plan where they want to go fast. They have different tools at their disposal to help them, but our strategy is basically the same. We need to slow them down as much as possible because they don't have a way to deal with a wide board. So as long as we keep picking off their stuff and characters alive, we'll eventually have a wide enough board to quest out. Win. We want to prioritize our crabs and foxes. I think that Peter Pan is also a good mention here. He gives our net following characters better evasive rush. You play Peter Pan on 3, maybe he rushes and takes something, and then on turn 4, if you play Genie and draw a card, well, the Genie has rush and can go in and move a character. It can be really useful, especially against their Pluto bodyguard, that you can give something rush to go in and knock down the 5 strength. Elsa, also very good. You want to be able to exert the characters before they're able to quest and give an reward and take them out that way. On their side, Alice is obviously the best card in their whole deck. Can't deal with it once it touches the board, and it protects another character. They can give their Pluto bodyguard ward, or they can give ward and additional questing to any of their other characters, especially have annoying 5-drops like Gantu or Beast or Amari. There's a lot of kind of variations that you could see with this list, and depending on what they're running, they have different threats. Some lists run Chen Po as well as an extra big bodyguard that can be very sticky and hard to remove. They also have access to Pete, so Pete is very good for them because it can stop our discarding actions, and it prevents things like Wrong Lever, and we don't talk about Bruno. So tough matchup, especially if they get a lot of Alices. If they get all their Alices and start giving everything to the board, you can't really interact with their board, and they can just win. So you gotta be very wary of that even if you're a little bit behind, you can't not prioritize removing their stuff because you never know when one Alice, then they just pop off. They get to 16 and they have an Alice and one other character, it's pretty much guaranteed. Not unwinnable. I would say that it's, maybe slightly favored for us, you definitely need to prioritize the anti-aggro package. At top cut, I played against the red-purple evasive deck. In this matchup, it's kind of similar to the purple steel list. We're going up against a deck that is bigger than us. It's something that we're not going to be able to top of, and we're not really fast enough to fully go underneath. So what we need to do is really focus on trying to get hand control, and then once hand control is established, try and establish board. So to do this, we want to get an early shift Diablo. They're running Brawl, and a lot of times the Diablo doesn't survive. They also have the Peter Pan, which can rush in on 3 and clean up the Diablo. So Diablo is best going first on 2, and then at least you get like 2 draws with it usually. But you still want to try and get it established, because if they can't remove the Diablo, their deck has a lot of card draw, and that can be a lot of card draw for us. Awesome. We really want to prioritize Prince John. I would say the Prince John is more important than the Diablo. You need the Prince John plus the discard package with Sudden Chill, the pull the levers, who knows. You need ways to draw lots of cards, try and get that hand control lock. Wrong lever is really useful in this matchup because it gives you a way to deal with their big characters, especially like the half shark, because we don't have anything that really deals with that very effectively. You can buff an Elsa or buff a Peter Pan or buff a Yacht and trade in, but the wrong lever, very good at dealing big threats, putting them on the bottom of their deck. Really powerful. So those are the cards that kind of win you the matchup. It's a bit of a grind because you gotta fight for hand control, prioritize that over everything, and just hope they don't get too far ahead on the board while you're also trying to fight a bit for board. And then once you get hand control, then you can start deal with their characters and lock them up. A lot of times they're getting up to like 12, 15 before we're able to actually win the game. We don't have a way to drag them back down in this deck, so it's really about managing your hand, trying to build a board. And sometimes you do need to quest, give them the option to take out characters, stop them from questing, and that way they don't get to 20 fast. In the matchup that I had, in one of the games, they got all the way to 19, and we had got to 15, and on our turn we'd be able to quest out the victory, and they didn't have enough ink to be prepared, but then they top decked Pirate's Life, and they won the game anyway. So it was really well played, but it can be very hard to stop them because of cards like that. Especially if you let their shark live and they can play the Pirate's Life more than once, and they can really get up to 20 pretty quickly if you're not careful. So tough matchup. I would say that they are favored, maybe heavily favored, but it's not unwinnable. But you have to go with the control lines and try and get control and hope that they don't get enough card draw to just ignore our discard effects. On their side, they want to have the rabbit. The rabbit's really good because it draws them a card coming in and leaving. They can bounce the rabbit multiple times. They want to have Peter Pan because he can take out Diablo, but he also enables the shark to come in and something out way. Also have Be Prepared. You have to be mindful that if they do get to 7 ink, you don't want to overcommit to the board because at any time they could top deck board. We want to have some cards to follow up with. So in the finals, we played against Green Steel Bogo. This is a deck that I saw on stream at the PPG tournament, and it's basically using a couple different combos to win the game. Using Bogo plus a ton of Floodborns, it's using Ursula as a double singer, and it's using the Return of Hercules to cheat out big characters, especially the Prince Philip Bogo combo. Lets them win the game by just playing out a Floodborn, pinging everything, and then all the damaged characters. So in this matchup, it's a very hard matchup because they have bigger characters that are hard for us to deal with. They have access to a good amount of removal for our characters, and they have access to Pete, so they can prevent us from affecting them with our action. So there's 2 ways that you can play it from our perspective. You can try and go under them with like an early shift into a genie or a couple genies and try and just, quest faster since they don't have access to evasive stuff other than Diablo. But they do have a lot of ways to remove it with singers. Prince John, he does have ward, so you can start working on their hand discard, try and get hand control. And we can deal with some of their big characters with Wrong Lever, with Paco Bruno, and the removal of those characters is really important, especially the Prince Philip, because he's a 6/6 that quests for 3. He has evasive, very tough to deal with once he gets on the board. You kind of need to save answers for him. That way you can't just run away with the game. On the opposing side, their winning cards in this matchup are Chief Bogo. We have a lot of low health characters, so the Bogo just pinging for 1 damage. Bogo plus Tinkerbell means that he's going to do 2 damage. And if they have multiple Bogos, basically every time they play a Floodborn, they're just going to end up bored. Sad Beast, very tough for us to deal with Sad Beast, unless we can exert him with Elsa and do a trade right away. The extra card draw basically negates our entire discard package, so very strong, very hard to deal with. If the opponent is able to, on the play, go like turn 2 Morph, we don't have a way to deal with Morph, and then turn 3 Shift Beast. They're pretty much going to win the game. I don't think that we have anything that's fast enough to really counter that. We could go like, wrong lever and just bounce to hand. That might be okay, but it still leaves us in a very tough spot. So the Beast very strong into like a lot of purple decks, especially this deck because we don't have a lot of high strength characters. So it's not till later in the game that we can move it. So in one of our games, he did do the turn 2 Morph, and we couldn't kill it till like turn 5 when we Elsa. The Ursula double singing. This is one downside to like removing the kits from the deck that I did to make the matchup better into aggro, is that I have no way to deal with the Ursula when it's not exerted until I get up to 5 Elsa, or I can put it on the bottom of the deck with lever. But this card also very strong into this deck. It's the same reason why the green steel discard deck is so good against the purple steel discard deck, is that their removal is really good at it, killing all our stuff. And getting extra value singing it twice is just like crippling. They also have Pete, and they have Shift Pete as well, which takes away our ability to sing Friends and sing Sudden Chill and stuff. So a lot of bad stuff for this particular matchup. Very hard. I did get O2'd, and even though the games were actually pretty close, I was trying to do beatdown and got to like 17, 18 lore. Still felt like it was inevitable that I wasn't going to be able to win. I wasn't able to discard the hand effectively enough. They would draw characters even when they were on top decks, and the characters are just big. Tough matchup, very well played, but it was fun. I think that if you're expecting this to be a matchup that you're going to play against a lot, then I wouldn't play the green-purple deck. It just doesn't have the answer to that deck that you need. This is the deck that did get first place. We'll go through the deck list. It has the Shift Diablo package. It is there for a little bit of card draw and tempo with singing songs, but it's also a very low-cost Floodborn, so once you get a Bogo set up. We have Morph. Anytime you're running a heavy Floodborn deck with green, Morph is a great option for shifting. We have 4 copies of Ursula Deceiver to pick songs and protect the board that you have. 4 copies of Deceiver Evolve, 2 copies of Muses. Muses also would be very devastating into our green-purple deck because of all of our low characters, but they didn't even need the Muses to beat us. 4 copies of Bogo. Bogo is uninkable, but he does quest for 2. He has a strong effect. I think that, he's quite a good card. There's certain decks that just can't deal with him, and he's got good lore gain when he starts questing. 4 copies of Sad Beast. Sad Beast is such a great card for card draw, and very tough for certain colors to deal with, especially right now with nobody running removal for Beast like Madame Medusa, then, he's a really good card. 3 copies of the Shift Pete, shut off singing, and to give himself resist. These are kind of real challenge beasts. 3 copies of Tinkerbell is really great to control the board. Opposing characters, especially aggro decks, don't want to quest once she's set up on the board. You have 4 copies of Prince Philip. So he's there to enable the combo with Bogo. So his effect says that when you play this character, banish all opposing damaged characters. He's a Floodborn, so when you play him, if you have a Bogo down, you trigger the Bogo first, you put 1 damage on all the opposing characters, and then you trigger Prince Philip's effect from the bag, and you banish all those characters. So it's like a one-sided B-Prep that's enabled by the 2-card combo, but 9 cost, very hard to play, unless you have 4 copies of the Return of Hercules, which you can play, and that lets you play a character for free. And that character could be Prince Philip. Your opponent also gets to play a character. The nice thing is that based on the ordering, they play their character, then you trigger Bogo, so it gets damaged, and the Prince Philip will also remove it. They might play a character that can also remove Prince Philip, like if they play a Maleficent Dragon or Hades, they can target and remove the Prince Philip at the same time. But his effect still happens and you still get the board wipe, which is important. And then for songs, we have I'm Still Here to give your characters resist and draw cards. Storm and Strength as it's a very solid deck list. And after playing against it, I thought that it looked like it was quite a bit of fun to play. See the combos being fun, and it does have ways to deal with aggro using muses. If you're looking for a sleeper deck to bring to set champs, you can definitely do this. I know that this deck was played at the Pro Play Summit. The deck, I think Ray956 and Stephen were playing, and something to keep in mind as a bit of a sleeper pick that people might not expect. They might see the green steel and assume that you're on the discard package. So something to keep in mind. Very well played by my opponent, Guru Games. It's always a tough matchup. So I was really happy to play, even though I lost in the playmat. I'll be back at it again in coming weekends to try and win a set champs, and I'll keep you guys updated. But thanks for checking out the video. Again, really appreciate the support. Hit the subscribe button and keep an eye out. I got some really exciting new content coming in a couple weeks that I'm so excited for everyone to see, and talk to you again soon. Cheers.